So 3 computers later, I think the only take-home message that's left to leave you with is that I love plants. And I'm going to talk about plants tonight a bit. And I'm going to actually start by handing some plants out so you guys can have some direct experiences of plants. So if you could just pick one, pass the others behind. And I just want you to, just want to invite you to hang out with these for a moment and just feel what it feels like to be with these plants. Woo. There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So notice what it feels like to touch them, maybe to smell them, to look at their leaf structure, their flowers, and pass them around. So these are all growing upstairs in the CIIS Zen garden on the roof. And I went up there for a moment before we started to just ground in. So just notice if there's any sensations in your body or any places where you feel like this plant touches you as you touch it, or as you look at it or sniff it or feel it. I entitled this talk Botanical CardioGnosis, the whispers of the plants through the portal of the heart. And it seems to be placed at the perfect point in the evening where all of our amazing speakers have touched on so many important pieces of coming to the entheogenic experience, whether that's from the indigenous tradition, looking at the Platonic influence, or how things might have influenced Plato and everyone back then, looking at how the astrology can affect an entheogenic experience. Maybe entheogenic experiences are affecting astrology. But really what it all comes back to is plants. So bear with me as every time I try to press play on the slideshow it crashes. So plants are living, breathing beings, and they are the source material for our encounters with the entheogenic realm. Long before the chemist Pot was able to synthesize amazing things like 2CB and LSD, we had things like LSA and psilocybin and beta-carbolines and DMT circulating around in the plant and fungal world. I love plants for a variety of reasons. Prior to becoming a naturopathic doctor, I was a synthetic chemist, and I worked in pharmaceutical industry making drugs for a living of the legal kind. And I was fascinated, but I was also blown away by the ego that was present in the realm of chemistry, particularly the field of medicinal chemistry, novel drug design and synthesis. And because I like to sometimes be a little bit adversarial in a kind way, I had this quote posted in my cube at work that said, "Some chemists, having synthesized a few compounds, deem themselves to be better chemists than Mother Nature, who in addition to synthesizing compounds too numerous to mention, synthesize those chemists as well." That helped me to keep some perspective, because when I joined the company that I worked for, there were 2 female chemists in a department of 70 people. So it was interesting, to say the least, and ego got in the way a lot of healing and medicine. And so I eventually left and went back to naturopathic school and fell in love with plants all over again. Why do I love plants so much? Well, they're pretty amazing, miraculous creators of this amazing process called photosynthesis, which allows them to combine carbon dioxide and water and harness the light from the sun, and then spit out oxygen and carbohydrates. There's another depiction of it. These are the leaves of a breadfruit plant in Hawaii, where I had the opportunity to spend some time last year studying with Kat Harrison. They primarily make glucose in terms of what's of interest to us besides oxygen, but they also make countless other compounds. They are the best biochemists on the planet. Glucose works in our advantage to give us somewhere between 30 to 38 units of ATP, which is the energy molecule that we use to run all of our reactions in our body. Depends which biochemist you talk to now. I learned it as 36 units, but now it's somewhere between 30 and 38. So that means every single glucose molecule that the human being takes in goes through this complex process, eventually leading us to the production of ATP. So we absolutely are dependent on plants, not only for oxygen production, but also for glucose. We can't make this on our own. We need to take this in. And thank you to the plants. In effect, eating glucose is eating the sun. And by virtue of eating the sun, the energy that's been harvested by the plants, we're ingesting the cosmos. Pretty cool. We're getting some stardust. So in naturopathic medical school, I studied extra amounts of herbal medicine training, but what I've come to now is that I'm actually truly a budding ethnobotanist. And what ethnobotany is the study of the relationships between people and plants. So it goes beyond the realm of what we can use as medicine. It also includes how people relate to plants as food, as shelter, as clothing, as fuel, for aesthetic purposes. So as you're passing those plants around, noticing which one maybe felt beautiful to you. I saw some people putting them on their faces and sniffing them. That's great. There's an aesthetic quality that we can appreciate. Think about when someone brings you flowers or you plant sunflowers in your garden, you're just doing it for the sake of beauty itself. Plants are also used significantly in ceremony and ritual, and as many of us are partial to the realm of entheogenic plants. I like these little word things that you type in one word and it maps out a bunch of stuff. So it's another way to think about ethnobotany, looking at all these different ways in which people relate to plants. All of my teachers of herbalism and botanical medicine said, if you want to learn about the plants, go and be with the plants. And so there's a lot to be said for that direct knowledge that's gained when we go and spend time outside. Or even if we grow something on our windowsill, or we have a single plant in our bedroom, whatever that is, or a cactus that maybe doesn't require too much energy because they don't need a lot of water. But there's a relationship that's formed. And by being with the plants, that is how we learn best from them. So this is a picture of me being with a ceiba tree. How many people know what a ceiba tree is? Ceiba tree, this is a ceiba tree on the Big Island of Hawaii. I had the opportunity to spend a good chunk of time on Cat Harrison and formerly Terrence McKenna's land on the Big Island last year. This is another view of the ceiba tree. They consider these trees pregnant with knowledge and information, and this is one of the trees that in South America is considered to be the axis mundi. So the axis mundi is this concept that at the center of the universe, the world, perhaps our hearts, our beings, is a plant or a tree. And that this tree offers both an anchor point and also a ladder where we can ascend through the different levels and different realms of being and experience. We can also learn about plants through reading. I've been revisiting this book. How many of you are familiar with this book? Stephen Herod Buhner's Secret Teachings of Plants. Jeff referred to it earlier. So he describes the heart, the human heart, as this biological oscillator. He describes 3 biological oscillators in the human body. And I'm quite partial to the heart. Especially since in terms of the energetic chakra system, it's at the center of the being. And what he says, there's a couple things he says that I think are interesting. The heart is a tightly interconnected part of an oscillating, non-linear neuronal network that is always processing electromagnetic waves within which information is encoded. So one way to think about the heart is as both a energetic oscillator that is transmitting information, but it's also perceiving information. So there's this constant energetic exchange going on. As Jeff alluded to earlier, there's this toroidal field that is created. And this does extend out, was it 5,000 times greater than the field from the brain? So there's potentially a much larger impact from your heart in receiving and perceiving and giving and transmitting information than any of the other biological oscillators. And as has been alluded to before, in many cultures, the heart is considered the seat of the consciousness, the mind, the being. We've gotten quite used to orienting towards the brain in our culture. And it's hard to say that anyone is right or wrong. They're maybe both true in some ways, depending what lens you want to look through. But I prefer to come back to this place of the heart. And let's see. I'm going to read one more. Wiener also says, when the fluctuating electromagnetic field of our heart touches another electromagnetic field, whether from a person, a rock, or a plant, we feel a range of emotional impressions, that is our experience of the information encoded within those organisms' electromagnetic fields and the alterations that have occurred in our field. This is, in fact, the source of the deep feelings that come from our immersion in wild landscapes. The feelings we have when we see the Grand Canyon, for instance. These externally generated feelings are an important and essential source of emotions for all human beings. For we emerged not only from our mother's wombs, but also from the wildness of the world. We developed, nestled, not only in our mother's electromagnetic fields, but also within the larger electromagnetic field of the earth. We are an expression of the ecosystem, the womb, the earth, an ecological response of the planet. And this information is deeply embedded within ourselves. There are many, many keys to helping to open the heart. Plants are one of them. They are one of the keys, one of the tools that can help with that resonation and help with communication. Again, the heart chakra generates and sends out the color green. And plants are constantly reminding us of greenness, right, when we think about them. They can be our allies. They can help us to awaken. We have psychoactive species of plants and fungus all around the world. It's hard to see all the different names. I kind of shopped in a few photos there. But you can see that there's lots of species around the world that potentially have helped us to awaken and to evolve our consciousness. Oh no, that one had lots of cool chemistry pictures on it. The point was, imagine fun chemistry. The point was to make that plants are some of the best biochemists on the planet. And I wanted to show you some of the structural analogies between our endogenous neurotransmitters such as serotonin and the way that that compares with the psilocybin molecule and DMT. But that'll be another talk another time. I also wanted to show you some images of some of our favorite psychoactive plants. A kind of shriveled flower of this went around. I was wearing it on my head earlier at the start of the talk. This is the morning glory. There's some of it growing upstairs. From the seeds of the morning glory, we get LSA, lysergic acid, which is very similar chemically to lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD-25. This is peyote. I actually had a dream this morning that one of my housemates brought me some toast in bed, and on the toast was peyote. Nice. Peyote paste, actually. And I was laying there thinking, I said, oh, you brought me toast with peyote paste on it. And then he said, oh yeah. And then he opened his hand and a bunch of peyote buttons fell. And I said, so how long of a commitment am I signing up here for with this toast? And he said, oh, about 3 to 4 hours. I said, I don't believe you. I got some stuff to do today. I didn't eat the toast. This is Trichocereus, or the San Pedro cactus, also referred to as wachuma. So our peyote and wachuma, or San Pedro, these are our mescaline-containing species. They also have countless other alkaloids, but well known for mescaline, which is a highly prized psychoactive magic.
Mescaline in San Pedro?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's some in there, yes. Yeah. Some fungus, Amanita muscaria, very unique in its pharmacology in that it has its own chemical imprint. and can be quite toxic if consumed on its own without proper processing, but a lot of lore connecting it to the flying reindeer in Siberia and the myth of Santa Claus. And Siberian shamans supposedly drink the urine of reindeer who have consumed the Amanita muscaria, so it's already been kind of metabolized once. I'm going to not tell you about my experience with Amanita muscaria. Let's say a little bit about, sorry, this one's tough to read. I'll have to read to you. So I wanted to say a little bit about how plants and people relate in this way of moving around the planet. So plants are pretty much rooted where they grow, right? They don't really have the luxury of getting up and walking around, but they go ahead and they engineer all these really cool ways of sending out seeds that can fly, of maybe seeds that have sticky, prickly things on them so they can attach to animals or to humans. Think about little burrs as you're walking through grass. So plants are, on some level, I wouldn't say that they're reliant on us for survival by any means, but they like it that we help them to move around. So not only physically in the sense of taking their seeds or letting a burr attach to us and dropping it off elsewhere or ingesting something and excreting it elsewhere, but when they come into our body, they get to have the experience of what it's like to walk around in the human consciousness. And so particularly with the entheogenic plants, I think that is very interesting to them, just as we are very interested in what we can perceive with their assistance. So here's a few things I put together. This says anthropo-botanical migrations. People have moved around the planet, taking plants with them and in search of plants. So we have the canoe plants when people sailed from throughout Polynesia and eventually ended up in Rapa Nui and up in Hawaii, where they brought specific plants that they knew would be important for food and for medicine. Plants have thus moved around the planet using human vectors. And so the question that I pose is, are plants moving around the planet in search of people? I don't know. People are moving around the planet in search of plants from time to time. I don't know that plants are moving around in search of us, but maybe, for example, ayahuasca is moving around the planet to find certain people to work with. Regardless, plants and humans are employing each other in their survival strategies. A beautiful example of some different perspectives on how this is happening with the psilocybin mushrooms. This is a slide that Kat Harrison has allowed me to use. So she calls this the three-way conversation about the value and content of psilocybin experiences. What she's pointing to here at the bottom of the triangle is the Mazatec land in Huautla de Jimenez, Oaxaca state of Mexico, where the psilocybin mushroom tradition originates from. And in that perspective, it's seen as not being a drug. It's actually something that's used in ritual and ceremony, for spiritual presence, for supplication, for helping us to see the way forward, for restoring harmony. There's a lot of gratitude present. We have the mushroom migrating out of Mexico with a lot of help from Terrence, coming to the west coast of California, where it's seen as a natural drug. It's also seen as a change agent. We're in the midst of a Dionysian uproar of culture in the 60s and 70s. The culture is wild and free. It's often a little bit unpredictable, but there is still some presence of sacred reverence and gratitude for the mushroom. Then we have the migration over to the East Coast, landing, let's say, in Johns Hopkins, where we have this medical model. We're not necessarily using psilocybin mushrooms, but we're using synthetic psilocybin, which when Gordon Wasson and Albert Hoffman brought some synthetic psilocybin down to the Mazatecs and gave some to Maria Sabina in the form of a capsule, she took it and she said, oh yeah, this is it. It's the same thing. It's the Niño Santos. And what's happening over there is we're utilizing psilocybin in an encapsulated form to help people deal with trauma, to look at end-of-life anxiety, to induce mystical experiences. So 3 very different frames of reference for how this medicine is making its presence known in the world. And it's helping, as Jeff talked about earlier, it's helping us to die better. You know, if people who are facing a terminal illness can sit with their anxiety, maybe relieve some of their anxiety, then that frees up a lot of energy for them to be more present with their family and their friends in their transition time. And that is such a gift, right? If someone is in a constant state of anxiety and trepidation and stress about their impending death, that's a lot of wasted energy that could be spent hugging and cuddling and picking flowers together, perhaps, so people can get a portion of their life back with these medicines. And then the mushroom has migrated on around the whole world. I know that we're short on time. I'm just going to say a little bit about ayahuasca. So when I was in medical school, I got really excited about plants. I doubled up on plant classes and went to both sections of the class multiple times a week. I was just totally a plant nerd. I did an extra training called Voyage Botanica, where we went out into the desert and all over the southwestern United States searching for plants and occasionally collecting them and learning about them. And so I really nerded out on plants, and plants started visiting me, both in my home, in my dreams, in my life. And I thought, okay, great. I know I love you, but what the heck am I supposed to do with you? So 3 years later, I was in my first ayahuasca experience, and I went into the journey, and I said to Mama Ayahuasca, I said, what do you want with me with plants? What is this about? And the strong message I heard was, be our advocate. And so this is a lesson and a teaching that I'm still embodying and learning how to embody and continuing to ask for help with. And it means a lot of things. It means picking up trash when I'm outside at a festival and there's something thrown into a bush. It means nurturing the baby mapacho plant that my housemate Julie gave me the other day. It means trimming back something that's overgrown. It means growing one little chard plant in our front yard and eating it from time to time. So it can mean a variety of things. My room is like a jungle. I've got vines going everywhere. It also means educating people about plant medicine. It means using herbs in my practice. It actually means applying them to women's cervixes instead of doing surgical procedures when they have precancerous lesions. So there's a lot of different ways that we can advocate for the use of plants. This is a picture that was taken also in Hawaii on Kat's land. So Kat and Terrence brought ayahuasca from the Amazon to the Big Island. It has steadily crept its way around the island and hopped around. But this is a beautiful, I don't know how old this plant is, but I know that they started bringing things over about 30 years ago. So these are some of the ayahuasca flowers up close. They're pretty happy. And ayahuasca is typically mixed with chacruna, Psychotria viridis. This is a plant also growing there on the Big Island. So the ayahuasca contributes pharmacologically the beta-carboline MAOIs, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which are compounds that enable your body's pharmacology to be resistant to breaking down the DMT that this plant then brings in. So your body is able to receive the benefits of the DMT molecule and experience orally that would normally be broken down or inactivated by the MAO monoamine oxidase enzyme.